Hello, my Italian food fanatics. Today, we're going to make a special pesto. It's going to be traditional pesto with a little bit of a twist. We're going to make it in a blender, and this is a recipe that comes to us from a gentleman by the name of Massimo Bottura of Osteria Francescana in Modena, Italy. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, if you like my videos, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so that you'll know when I release another video, which is almost on a daily basis, 5 days a week. I want to help you cook better so you won't have to go to the restaurant, so you can cook better than restaurant food in your own home and feed your friends and family and loved ones and be very proud of it. All right? I think the restaurant industry to a certain extent has let us down. Now, if you don't want to serve, if you want to be served and you like the ambiance, that's one thing. But for the most part, the quality of food across the board in our restaurants today has gone way down. And there's nothing wrong with it. They have to make a profit. Anyway, I'm going to get off the soapbox. Let's get into the kitchen and let's make this thing. Here's a little preview. That looks phenomenal. And it is. You're going to love it. It's going to be easy. It's going to be fun. And there's a secret ingredient that we're going to add. Come on, let's go. All right, my Italian food fanatics, it's time to get started with our pesto. Now, I've told you before that this pesto is unlike any pesto you've probably made, but it's very much like every pesto that you've ever made. And you'll know the reason why in just a moment. We'll start with some olive oil. Of course, it's 100% California olive oil, the best olive oil in the entire world. Of course, I'm from California, so that's the way that I think. We use some pine nuts. We're going to use some Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. So nothing out of the ordinary yet. We're going to use 1 clove of garlic, believe it or not. And now something a little bit different. Here are some breadcrumbs. We're going to use basil. Nothing's new there, but we're also going to use mint, and we're going to use a sprig of thyme. So basil, mint, and thyme work together, but sage and rosemary don't work well with mint and basil. But rosemary, of course, and thyme go together. So these herbs complement one another, and it is one of the reasons why we're using them in this pesto to give it many layers of flavor, all right, to make it multi-dimensional, as it were. Now, this idea is not mine. It comes to us courtesy of Massimo Bottura, the celebrated 3 Michelin Star chef of Osteria Francescana in Modena, Italy, where I had a chance to visit. And let me tell you, that at the time that I visited, it was the #1 hotel. The #1 restaurant in the entire world. The reservations were extremely difficult to get. He also uses, in lieu of pine nuts, he uses breadcrumbs, and he's toasted some of them, and I'm going to toast that and use them on the final dish as well. But the idea is this, is that if you don't have pine nuts, you can always substitute. If you don't have enough basil, you can always add other herbs that complement it, all right? And so that's the idea. Cooking is an organic process in a lot of ways, and if you don't have something, you can make do with something else. That's very, very, very Italian. So let's get to making this, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, my Italian food fanatics, let's get started. First of all, we're going to make this in a blender. I don't know if I told you that, but and we're going to do it with a secret ingredient that I'm going to reveal in just a moment. We're going to take this 1 clove of garlic, cut it in half, and we are going to rub the inside of the blender with the center portion of this garlic. I don't know if you can see it, but from my standpoint, I can. We're getting the oils from the garlic rubbed onto the plastic. Let me try and do it here so you can see a little bit. I don't know if you can see it right there, but it's rubbing off. All right? And that's essentially all we're going to do. This is also extremely Italian because in America, our pestos are chock full of garlic. It's a huge garlic flavor, which Italians don't particularly care for. And whether you like it or not, this comes from one of the world's best chefs, Massimo Bottura. All right, so whether you think it's the right way or not is, well, whatever. For you, it may not be the right way, but you can take it from somebody that had a little bit of experience in the kitchen that this is the way to do it. And it's the Italian way, because as you know from our tomato sauces, that they're the authentic, from all of the other dishes, that for the most part, unless it's aglio e olio, you're not going to be using a lot of garlic in copious amounts in Italian cooking. All right? Now, that's not the only thing, but here we are. So that's it. That is the extent of our garlic. And now I have to take you and move the camera so that we can actually see what's going on inside the bowl, and then we're going to move it again. So bear with me. All right, now we have a different view. We are going to put in our olive oil. Our pine nuts. Some of our breadcrumbs, not all. We may need some more. We're going to add in our basil that I have washed already. And our mint. Pretty easy to do. In fact, you can start boiling the water before you make this thing, and it's a lot faster. And then I'm just going to pull the stems off of or destem the thyme, and just put a little bit of the thyme, just the one sprig, inside of the blender as well. And then we're going to add our cheese. All right, and we're going to add our grated cheese in there, and we'll now go to the actual blending and the use of our secret ingredient. All right, before we get started blending, I want to show you the secret ingredient. You're going to be shocked, perhaps. The secret ingredient, believe it or not, is ice water. I filled up this container, or this 4-cup measuring cup, full of ice, and then I've put some filtered water on top of it. And this is what we're going to use in the pesto. As the blades of the blender blend up the pesto, what we want to do is use ice water to keep everything cool so that the blender does not burn the basil and the other herbs. Okay? And then what will happen is the breadcrumbs will soak this water up and make it a very viscous pesto, which is what we want. So there's a method to the madness. Massimo Bottura is a genius in this aspect, because how many times have we tasted pesto that's just been wrecked because it's been spun up so badly that the basil is burned. So here we go. Ice water is the secret. All right, here we go. I have the top of the blender on. I know you can't see that, but I had to do that, obviously. And we're going to turn on. It's going to get loud, so I may have to speak a little bit louder. But here we go. Okay, now that I've fast forwarded a little bit through that, you can see through the magic of time lapse that we now have a bright green, beautiful pesto. I'm going to add a little bit more breadcrumbs, and we're going to continue to blend here for a couple more seconds. Okay, it's been a couple of seconds of blending, and now we're going to taste, because that's what we should always do. I'm going to taste the pesto and adjust. That's excellent. All we need now is a little bit of salt to actually make it pop. Now, we don't want to use too much salt, because what's going to happen? We're going to use some pasta water and some additional olive oil. Of course, that doesn't make it salty towards the end of cooking. So you want to keep the salt to a minimum. Now that that's blended in, it's actually very cool when you taste it. Cool as in cold because of the ice water. And now with the addition of the salt, it is literally perfect. It could use a little bit more salt, but we're not going to add it because the pasta water that we add is going to be salty. And then we're going to mix it all around. So right now, it's absolutely perfect for what we want. I'll pour that out, and we'll start in with the pasta. All right, let's pour this out. And you'll see what a beautiful, beautiful green color it is. It's almost lime green, essentially, which means that the herbs didn't burn up in there. It would turn black and they would oxidize if it was too hot. So we know that it's perfect. I'm going to clean the rest of the bowl from the blender out, and we'll come back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're now going to make some water for our pesto. Put exactly 4 cups of water into our sauce pot, which is, you know how I like to do things, because we're going to use that pasta water. And when this comes to a boil, we'll then add our salt, which will equal exactly 2 teaspoons of regular table salt. Anyway, we'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, our water's boiling. We'll now add exactly 2 teaspoons to that 4 cups of water of regular table salt, okay? Not kosher salt, not Maldon salt, not pink salt from the Himalayas, not black salt from Hawaii, not Persian blue salt, just regular old table salt, not even kosher salt, not Morton's, not Diamond Crystal kosher salt, just regular salt, table salt. Salt is salt. It will dissolve. It'll be fine. We don't need rock salt. We don't need copious amounts of water. I've discussed these things before. Today, I'm going to use a mezzi rigatoni, which is half of a rigatoni, half size. So rigatoni are normally that long. These are mezzi rigatoni, not messy, but mezzi, M-E-Z-Z-I, not M-E-S-S-I, mezzi rigatoni. There we go. Now, you know, if you've ever watched any of my videos, that I'm a proponent of stirring the pasta, and the pasta will not stick so long as the starches gel. After the starches gel, the pasta will not stick. You do not need copious amounts of water, and it doesn't need to be at a continual rolling boil. Once the starches gel, the rigatoni will not stick, so long as there's enough water in there where they can move around and swim like you see here. Okay, we'll be back when our rigatoni is ready. Oh, by the way, in this variation, when you're making pesto, the pasta needs to be fully cooked before we add it to the pesto, because we're not going to put it back on the fire. The pesto should not touch heat, all right? Just the warmth, of course, from the pasta and a little bit of the pasta water. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil and maybe sprinkle on a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano, and then some of our breadcrumbs. So we'll be back when all of this is ready. All right, there's one other thing that I wanted to show you, is that the pesto itself, from sitting around, has become far more viscous. Number one, because it's cooled down, and number two, because those breadcrumbs have absorbed some of the liquid. So here we go. That's exactly what you're kind of looking for. All right? And still that beautiful color there. So we'll come back. The pasta's almost done. All right, our pasta is almost ready. We're going to put some pesto inside of this larger bowl. And we're going to fish out our mezzi rigatoni and put it in there. And we're going to give it a little bit of a mix. Get a fresh spoon here. I'm going to coat up that rigatoni. How sweet it is. We're going to add a little bit of 100% California extra virgin olive oil to give it a little bit of a shine. Oh, yes. Maybe a little bit of pasta water to thin it out just a tiny little bit. And look at that. I think we're ready to plate up. Be back in a couple of seconds. All right. Ready to plate up. How sweet it is. This mezzi rigatoni. How beautiful could that be? It doesn't get more beautiful than this. Beautiful green color. The perfume that's coming off of the pesto. A little bit of warmth. I mean, it just doesn't get better than this. Oh, thank you, Massimo Bottura. And then, of course, we're going to put some breadcrumbs on top. Again, thanks to Chef Massimo Bottura for this particular idea to make a cucina povera dish with pesto. And if you don't have the ingredients that you need, you know that you can improvise and use breadcrumbs instead of pine nuts or other herbs. So now let's go. It's time to taste this thing. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, but he didn't show us how to toast the breadcrumbs. Actually, I did. I took those same panko breadcrumbs and I made toasted breadcrumbs with them, and I've put up a video on how to toast the breadcrumbs. It's very simple. In a skillet, you just put the breadcrumbs, you drizzle a little bit of 100% California olive oil on top of them, and you take a spatula or a wooden spoon and move them around slowly on high heat. You have to be there the whole time. Move them around, and in about 5 to 7 minutes, you have toasted breadcrumbs that are divine. And it's even better when you put them on the pesto that I showed you today. You're gonna love it. So easy to do, so inexpensive, so beautiful, so flavorful. So come on, go do it. All right, my Italian food fanatics. Here it is. You've seen me plate it up. You saw me add the Parmesan cheese. You saw me add the breadcrumbs, and now is the moment of truth. I can't wait. I don't know if you can hear the crunch, but boy, does that taste good. I'm a huge fan of pesto, and this variation is just great. Something a little bit different with the crunchiness of the breadcrumbs, and of course, we tasted the pesto before, and you know how it was all made. You know that we used ice water to make it, and it kept its liveliness, it kept its beauty, the subtleness of all of the flavors are in there. You can taste the garlic, believe it or not. And of course that olive oil, the basil, the mint, gives it a freshness. The thyme gives it base notes that you wouldn't ordinarily get. And we've learned something. We've learned that we can improvise. We can use what we have. It doesn't need to follow a specific order. And this doesn't come from me. This comes from the mouth of potentially Italy's, right now anyway, Italy's greatest chef, Massimo Bottura. So it's a 100% authentic Italian. It's made in a blender, okay? Not in the mortar and pestle. That doesn't matter. If a 3 Michelin Star restaurant, which was the #1 restaurant in the world when I was there, can make it in a blender and improvise, so can you, all right? There are no rules. You do what you want, and don't let anybody tell you any differently, all right? Now, is there a classic way to make a dish like this? Yes, I posted a video on how to make the classic pesto, the Ligurian pesto, in a mortar and pestle. So if you want to do it that way, that's the method. And all the ingredients and everything like that are on the website. You can go find it or search through my videos and you'll be able to find it. It's one of the first videos I put up. It's not very entertaining, I got to be honest with you. But it is informative. This is really great. Come on, I want you to try this. Go out and get the ingredients. You have a blender or a food processor. You can use a food processor for the same thing. Come on, go out and make this. Have some friends over. It's not that expensive. The pine nuts are expensive, but you don't have to use pine nuts. Remember that. You can just use breadcrumbs. By the way, pine nuts are expensive because they have to be individually removed from the cone by hand, kind of like saffron has to the stigma, whatever, the little saffron strands have to be hand extracted. That's what makes this stuff very, very expensive. But boy, is it worth it. I could eat pine nuts by the pound. I just love them so much. Roasted pine nuts, oh, so good. So it can be very economical. A little basil, a little mint, some thyme. You don't even need to use the thyme or the mint. You can just use the basil, make it. You know how to do it in the blender with the ice water so that basil doesn't burn. So there's no excuse. Come on, go out and make this. Leave me a comment if you make it. If you make it, send me a picture, tag me in a post, whatever, and I'd love to do a name splash with you if you do end up making this. Right now, I want to eat some more. So I will see you very, very soon. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe, ring the bell, tell your friends, and thank you again.